Rolling Tin Fist.
Hello, man. Hope you're doing well. Finally got some downtime after a very long week. Excuse me, caught up on all my sleep. So I was thinking of a book that I used to see in my mom's bookshelf when I was much younger called Passages by Gail Sheehy. I'll put a link in the description below. It's subtitled Predictable Crises of Adult Life, and it basically talks about the personality and sexuality changes that adults go through in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and beyond. And it read very much to me like, I would say, pop psychology. More, I would say, behavioral science than any kind of really psychiatric science. But anyway, I did read it then and just kind of watched how my life changed, at least through my 20s and the cusp of the 20s moving to the 30s. Anyway, looking at MGTOW and the manosphere and the men in it, and understanding that it's comprised of men of all generations, regardless of whether they're married or not. And there are stages that men specifically go through as they develop, and including when they discover the red pill. As I think back, I remember my teens through my early 20s as very sexually turbulent. That is, dominated by my little head rather than my big head. And, mostly thinking about getting laid. Felt like I was walking around with a hard on 70% of the time. As I progressed through my 20s, it became a bit more manageable, but not by much. Still a lot of simping, pussy begging, etc. I was in a major relationship, a starter marriage, as I call it, where it was cohabitation, buying a house together, really long term with the plan of getting married. End up not getting married, end up separating and having the lawyers kind of work out the financials. So although we weren't married or didn't have kids, still went through the serious upheaval of having to, you know, separate finances, lives, properties, get a lawyer involved and all those other details. And after that separation, I went through what I know a lot of men that I've known personally go through is when you've been in a serious relationship for so long, you go through a whoring phase where you pretty much um, hit anything with a pulse because you can. And sometimes you don't exercise the judgment you typically would. A lot of that is just reactionary. Not all men go through it, but at least a lot of the men that have gone through that kind of separation have gone through something like that. And it's usually temporary until they kind of reach a sense of equilibrium and clarity in terms of where they are now. For me, this was, I would say, around the 30s, early 30s. And it was really a great time for me because I got to really extend my understanding of women and basically understand how I could get what I needed from them. I went through different relationships. I got to a point where I could even discern a type of woman I wanted to have a sexual relationship with, and just pretty much have sex when I wanted, how I wanted, with who I wanted. I mean, I could show up at 3 a.m., hit it, be gone before the sun came up. I got the type of woman that would uh, acquiesce to an arrangement that worked for me, as well as her, but it had to work for me, or basically no games. And it was clear that I made it clear to the woman that I was interested in a long-term relationship, no strings attached, and they were either in or out. I treated them well, provided that they understood the ground rules and they didn't try to say they understood, but really in the background trying to get something more. So I would get through a period where I would just get tired of having sex with them. Like, I would just be like, okay, been there, done that, meh. And then I went through a period even longer where I didn't really sleep with women at all. I would date them, be intimate, but never really have a long-term sexual relationship with them. And that was really because that I got a better understanding of who I was, and what my kryptonite was, and how those sexual interactions with the different women would kind of start changing my perspective and take me off focus of what I wanted out to do, what I wanted out of life and what to do. So post that, I got married because I wanted children, and that's all I wanted out of the relationship, to have children. This is way before the red pill and MGTOW and all of that. Knowing what I know now, obviously I would have done things a little different. But fast forward to, beginning of middle age, whereas the sexual drive of the 20s is far behind. You get to a point where you're thinking with your big head more, or hopefully more, but in my case more, than the little head. And even being married, there are women who have wanted to have affairs, and I can say no with confidence. And not only because I'm married, but because I understand. It's like a addiction. I mean, Messenger Rising has a lovely series on this, where he talks about essentially all things in life, if taken beyond moderation, you can get into some serious trouble. And I understood that by my, beginning of my middle age, this period of my life. Whereas, having these affairs with these women would only further complicate an already tenuous life situation the typical married man with children has in this day and age. So it was relatively easy to say thanks, but no thanks. But this wasn't something that happened overnight. This is something that evolved over time. And it's important for, I think, men to understand that there are phases, each different from each man. There are some similarities, just from a biological and developmental standpoint. But each man's path will be different. But to respect that there are phases, and one not ought to try to rush through them without really working through them. Each will come in his time. There's going to be a phase where you want to fuck everything with a pulse. There's going to be a phase where you just want to, reproduce. There's going to be a phase where you may enjoy sex, but it's not the main driving thing in your life. There are other things you want to do. And even as I, go through middle age, I'm thinking to a point where I'm further extending on what I'm doing now, even after taking the red pill. My adventures, my motorsporting adventures, giving back, within the manosphere. And even beyond that, once my kids, become adults, thinking about how I want to spend my time, and thinking of something I've always thought about almost in jest about, you know, leading a more solitary life. And that's where aspects, even though I'm not MGTOW, I'm married, but with kids, but aspects of what Messenger Rising talks about in his Monk Code series is appealing. You know, the idea where you remove yourself from the typical opiates of a modern society, whether they be women, you know, drugs and other things in excess, and you kind of just focus on what's going on inside of you, understanding you, and respecting the nature outside of you, the things that you can't necessarily control, but you see, understand, and appreciate those things as they are. And that's typically found in nature. But anyway, it's really something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and I think for men, whether they're MGTOW or not, it's something worth thinking about and paying attention to as each of us as men develop, irregardless of where we are along that path.